Ever get curious about a name you stumble upon? Like, huh, who is this person?
Happens all the time, but who has the time to, go full-on detective?
Exactly. Well, today, we're the detectives, diving deep into the world of Jared E. Hazleton.
Hazleton, okay. Rings a bell? Maybe.
Maybe not yet, but buckle up. This guy's worked in banking, government, even wrote a book about sulfur.
Sulfur. Okay, now I'm really curious. Not your usual resume bullet point.
Right, we've got research papers, biographical info, the whole 9 yards. So picture this. Hazleton, fresh out of school, lands a job as a research economist for the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston.
Whoa, straight to the big leagues. Not just like ANY Bank, the Fed.
Exactly. Talk about diving headfirst into the world of money and markets.
You'd have to have a real knack for numbers A&D, like understanding how the whole system works.
Apparently so. He even became manager of the research department there. But then, he takes a turn. Enters the academic world. Professor and associate dean at both the University of Texas at Austin AD, the University of Washington in Seattle.
Wow, talk about a double life. Finance whiz A&D, a teacher. That's got to be some serious brain power.
Right. But here's the thing. He doesn't just stay in the ivory tower. He brings that expertise to the Texas Research League, a nonpartisan group dedicated to making government more effective.
So he's not just about theory. He wants to see how economics can actually help people.
Exactly. He was president of that league for several years, trying to make a real difference in how Texas works. But amidst all this serious stuff, he writes a book, The Economics of the Sulfur Industry.
Okay, wait, what? Sulfur? That's a bit of a curveball.
Right. But here's the thing. Back then, sulfur was a big deal. Crucial for agriculture, manufacturing, you name it.
Ah, so he's not just randomly picking topics. There's a real-world connection.
Exactly. And this wasn't just some dry textbook. Hazleton was diving deep into the forces shaping a vital part of the global economy. Pollution-abating policies, available resources, how those affect the market. He was looking at the big picture.
It's like he's got this real-world lens on top of all that economic theory.
Right, so we've got this brilliant economist, but he also wants to make a positive impact. And that brings us to his work on environmental economics. He co-authored a paper on land use management on the Texas Gulf Coast.
Interesting. That's a place where development and the environment are constantly bumping heads.
Exactly, and this paper tackled a huge EE question. How do you balance economic growth with protecting the environment? They use something called the hierarchical goal programming model. It basically let them analyze decisions at different levels.
Whoa, so they weren't just looking at one little piece of the puzzle. They were seeing how everything connected.
Exactly. Pretty impressive for someone who also wrote a whole book about sulfur. But wait, there's more. He co-authored another book, this time about managing macroeconomic policy, the Johnson presidency. President Lyndon B. Johnson, during a really intense time in American history.
Ooh, now that's a deep dive into politics and economics.
Right. This book uses the idea of the sub-presidency to understand how Johnson handled economic institutions like the Federal Reserve. Think of it like a conductor leading an orchestra, trying to get all these different instruments to work together for a beautiful symphony of economic growth.
And this was all happening during Vietnam, the Great Society programs. That's a lot of pressure.
No kidding. But Hazleton and his co-author actually argued that the Johnson administration was pretty good at managing the economy despite all those challenges.
Wow, really? So they found a silver lining in what seemed like chaos.
They did. And they actually draw some valuable lessons from that time. Lessons that are still relevant for policymakers today who are facing their own set of economic puzzles.
So it's like history repeating itself, but maybe this time we have a better playbook thanks to Hazleton.
Exactly. So we've got Hazleton in finance, academia, presidential policy. This guy gets around. But there's a whole other side to him.
Don't leave us hanging. What else did he get up to?
Well, he was super involved in his community. The United Way Texas, the Arthritis Foundation, even the Bryan Rotary Club.
So he's not just all about numbers and theories. He actually cares about people.
Exactly. He walked the walk. It's amazing to see someone so accomplished still finding time to give back and make his community a better place. But we're just getting started here. Stay tuned, because in Part 2, we're going to explore Hazleton's work on topics you might never expect. Fisheries economics and the economic challenges of oil-rich nations. Back again. And last time we left off, we were pretty amazed by Jared E. Hazleton's career path, right? Banking, government, even sulfur.
Yeah, the sulfur thing was a definite surprise.
Total curveball. But get this, he was also into fisheries economics.
Fisheries. Okay, now that's a head-scratcher. How do you even get into that?
Right. So back in 1967, he co-edits a book called Recent Research and Developments in Fisheries Economics.
1967, huh? That was a time of big change for the fishing industry, wasn't it?
Definitely. New technology, more global competition. And people were starting to worry about overfishing.
Right, like, are we going to run out of fish? Big question. So Hazleton's right there in the thick of it, trying to make sense of all these changes.
It really does seem like a turning point for the whole industry. And Hazleton's not just watching from the sidelines. He's diving deep.
Totally. The book goes into all sorts of things: the economics of different fishing methods, the impact of regulations, how to manage fisheries so they actually last.
So not just about the numbers, but also about the people who rely on fishing for their livelihoods.
Exactly. Hazleton and his colleagues, they weren't just ivory tower types. They understood that economics is about real people's lives.
Really seeing the human side of the equation.
Absolutely. And he didn't just focus on New England. He also co-authored a paper called Gold Rush Economics, Development Planning in the Persian-Arabian Gulf.
Whoa, hold up. From fish to gold rushes. How'd that happen?
Well, think back to the 1973 oil crisis. Oil prices went through the roof, right?
Yeah, those were crazy times. Gas lines, shortages.
Exactly. And suddenly, the oil-rich Gulf states are swimming in cash. It was like a modern-day gold rush.
Ah, I get it. So Hazleton's seeing parallels between the chaos of a gold rush and what these oil-rich countries are going through.
Right. He and his co-author used that gold rush analogy to describe the challenges these countries faced. Like, how do you manage that sudden wealth responsibly? How do you avoid the boom and bust cycle that often comes with it?
That's such a good comparison. It's like winning the lottery, but for a whole country.
Exactly. And that paper, it digs into the unique situations of these oil-producing nations. It talks about the need for smart planning, diversifying their economies, investing in their people, basically making sure that wealth lasts.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, even if it is an oil basket.
Exactly. And those insights, they're still relevant today, not just for oil-rich countries, but for anyone dealing with rapid economic growth. It's a timeless lesson about planning for the future.
Thinking long-term, not just for the quick win.
Right. So we've got fisheries, oil, and somewhere in between, Hazleton's tackling public policy issues too. Environmental protection, land reform.
The guy never slows down.
Nope. He always wanted to use his knowledge to tackle real-world problems, whatever they were.
And speaking of real-world problems, there's this report he co-authored on the cost-effectiveness of year-round schooling.
Wait, what? Year-round school? That doesn't sound very economic-y.
I know, right? But think about it. Education is crucial for any society, and how we structure the school year has a huge impact on everyone. Students, teachers, parents, the whole community.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going with this. So Hazleton's looking at it from a cost-benefit perspective. Like, is year-round schooling actually cheaper? Does it help kids learn better?
Exactly. His report lays it all out, looking at the potential savings, the educational benefits, but also whether it's actually doable and what it means for everyone involved.
So typical Hazleton, right? Taking a complicated issue and breaking it down, using data and analysis to help people make better decisions.
He's all about evidence-based decision-making, and it's clear he applied that to pretty much everything he did.
Totally. A real dedication to rigorous analysis, considering all sides of the issue. That's what comes through in all his work.
So we've seen Hazleton explore everything from sulfur to fisheries to education. What else did he get up to?
Oh, there's still more. In our final part, we'll uncover Hazleton's work on public finance, bank mergers, and the age-old debate about the role of government in the economy. Stay tuned.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of Jared E. Hazleton. We've covered so much ground already: sulfur, fisheries, even year-round schools.
It's really incredible how diverse his work is, right? But there's a common thread, a commitment to using economics to solve real-world problems.
Absolutely. And on this last part, we're going to see that commitment in his work on public finance, bank mergers, and the role of government in the economy. Big topics.
Definitely big, but important. Let's start with public finance. It might not sound super exciting, but it's how governments keep the lights on, right?
Exactly. It's about making sure they have the resources to provide those essential services. Everything from roads to schools to, well, everything.
Right, the things that make a society function. And Hazleton co-authored this paper called Public Finance Policies for Bahrain.
Bahrain, okay.
It's a case study of how a nation can manage its finances responsibly to promote both economic development and social well-being.
So they were looking at how Bahrain could use its resources to invest in infrastructure, education, healthcare.
Exactly. And they emphasize the need for strategic planning, fiscal discipline, thinking about the long term.
It's like being a responsible parent, but on a national scale.
That's a great analogy. You have to make choices that benefit not just yourself today, but also your kids and grandkids tomorrow.
Exactly. And those insights from Hazleton's work, they apply to any government, really.
Absolutely. It's about making the most of limited resources, balancing all those demands. So from managing a nation's finances, we jump to something that feels almost the opposite: bank mergers.
Definitely at a different scale.
Right. And Hazleton wrote this paper called Public Policy Toward Bank Mergers, which looks at all the legal and economic implications of those transactions.
Because when banks get too big, it can stifle competition, right?
That's a big concern. Hazleton's work really dives into the history of how those regulations have evolved in the U.S., how policymakers have tried to strike that balance.
Trying to prevent monopolies while also allowing for healthy competition, it seems super tricky.
It is, and Hazleton's analysis really highlights that challenge. It's about creating a financial system that works for everyone.
That's a tough needle to thread. And now, let's zoom out to the biggest picture, the role of government in the economy.
Ah, yes. The age-old debate, hands-off or hands-on. It never goes away.
It's such a fundamental question. And Hazleton tackled this head-on in his paper titled Public Policy for Controlling the Environment. He looked at how governments can protect natural resources and make sure development is sustainable.
Especially relevant today with all the environmental challenges we're facing.
Totally. So what did Hazleton say? What's the answer?
Well, his work highlights the importance of clear regulations, strong enforcement, and understanding that protecting the environment isn't just a cost, it's an investment in our future.
It's about finding that sweet spot where the economy and the environment can both thrive.
Exactly. And Hazleton shows that governments have a crucial role to play in making that happen. They can create incentives, support innovation, make sure progress benefits everyone.
So here we are at the end of our deep dive into the life and work of Jared E. Hazleton. What a journey.
It has been. From sulfur to fisheries to the big picture of economic policy, Hazleton's career is a testament to the power of combining intellectual curiosity with a passion for public service.
He was a brilliant economist, but he never forgot that economics is ultimately about people.
Exactly. He used his knowledge to make a real difference in the world, and that's something we can all aspire to.
It's been inspiring to explore his work, and we hope you've enjoyed this journey with us. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another deep dive into the ideas that shape our world.